Well, good morning. I'm Scott, and this is my lovely wife, Amy.
Good morning.
And we are resuming our From This Day Forward series, which is designed to help each one of us, whether we're single, going to be married, we're already married, you've been divorced and are wanting to get remarried, or even if you just want to be single the rest of your life. We really think this is helpful for everybody. As the series says, From This Day Forward, is really the theme on all of these topics, that we can learn from the past, but let's live life as we look forward and the things that we can do moving forward in order to create a better marriage, as we talk about today. And so Amy was brave enough. I asked her to come and help me this morning because I think it would be more beneficial for everybody. You got a fan already? Yeah. They don't clap like that for me ever, really, so.
I'm glad I could help you out
Yeah,
today.
exactly. And so this is not really a normal message. This is just going to be more Amy and I sharing our story a little bit and some of the things that have been helpful for us through our lives. We've going on 14 years of being married this year, and we're not perfect. We were the first ones to admit that. We recognize that we don't know everything there is about marriage, and we don't do things perfectly. We yell at our kids, we yell at each other, we fight, and we aren't perfect. We're not trying to pretend that we are.
We try and limit the yelling.
We do try to limit the yelling. And we're not at all suggesting you should look at our marriage and idolize us or anything like that. But hopefully today would just be helpful in sharing some of the things that we've learned and God has taught us as we're putting into practice some of the things that He says as far as marriage. But we're really wrestling today for all of us. And even if you're single and you don't plan to get married, that's great. And God says that's a great way to live, and it frees you up in a lot of ways to be focused on God and His kingdom in different ways than a married person. So even if you're planning to be single for the rest of your life, I think this would be helpful because you know married people. And honestly, you could help some people that are around you by today. So it's really for all of us. But we're going to wrestle with this big question today.
What does it mean to be married?
Yeah, what does it mean to be married? Like, you think about that. Like, just wrestle with that for a second. What does it really mean to be married? Is it to have a ceremony with a big party afterwards? Because those are a ton of fun.
Spend lots of money.
Yeah, and spend tons of money. You know. Does it mean to be living together, two people in the same house or apartment? Like, what does it really mean to be married? Does it mean to have a certificate, a piece of paper that says you're recognized by the state to be married? Like, does it mean to just share those deep emotional things with someone else? Those dreams, those desires, those thoughts, your big ideas for life? Like, what does it really mean to be married as you think about it? Does it mean just sharing some of the financial obligations that come with living in a household together? Does it just mean you can have sex anytime you want? I don't know. I just didn't know what the response would be there. Well, so what does it really mean to be married? I really think it comes down to one word, and we're going to talk about that today. One word for what it means to be married. We're going to unpack that today because it's probably more than what you would think right off the bat. But this big word, this one word, is intimacy. Intimacy. Like to have an extreme familiarity with another person. To have a closeness with another person that you don't have with anybody else. A deep, deep friendship with somebody. Familiarity. And so we're gonna talk about that because intimacy is a beautiful thing. I just know this. I don't know you and your story, whether you're married or not been married, but I do know this about people. That we're all created for intimacy. That down deep, we're longing, even if we put up a front that we don't really want to get to know people or whatever, that there's a deep down longing because we're built in the image of God. We're created with this intimacy like inside of us that has a desire to be known by somebody and to know somebody really, really well. And it's just one of those things that's beautiful about being married is that closeness that comes. And so we're going to talk about what it means in intimacy, and there's a lot of different areas of intimacy. Let's put that up on the screen, because intimacy there's a lot of different things. There's spiritual intimacy, there's a legal intimacy, there's a geographical and emotional, there's an intellectual, a financial, and physical. We're going to talk about all of those briefly this morning. But intimacy, and there's probably more that you could think of and add to this list, but it's more than just one of those areas. It's really all of those areas, what it means to be married. And so the first one we're going to talk about is spiritual intimacy. Spiritual intimacy.
And I think this boils down to having a growing relationship with God as an individual and then as a couple, growing in your relationship with God.
Yeah, because you probably are aware of this, but going into marriage, there's a huge spiritual dynamic that's going on. It's not a contract with another person, it's a covenant. It's something that God set up, and he said this, he says, early on when man was alone, Adam was alone, he created Eve out of man, out of a part of his body, and then they're like, so they were one. He makes two, and he says, this is why in Genesis 2:24, this is why man leaves his father and mother and is joined with his wife, and the two become one. Because they were one, he created two, and then this joining back together. And then I kind of get frustrated at times with this. And then God's pretty quiet about what it means to really be married from then on. Like, have you read the Bible? Have you looked into it? Like, he doesn't really go on to really explain, like, okay, now what? You know, what does that mean?
There's no separate handbook for just marriage.
Yeah, there's no separate part for marriage.
That would be nice.
It would be nice, a little more. I mean, and Jesus talks about marriage, but he's always asked this question of how do I get out of it? Is really when it comes up, right? And Moses had that question, and so people are wrestling with that, and then they bring it up to Jesus, and like, well, how do we get out? And Jesus we talked about a couple weeks ago, you know, marriages till death does us part. Contracts, we have contracts in life to cover our own butts, right? And so we minimize risk, and that we are, you know, something that we can cover and get out of if we need to, but this is how. But that's not marriage. Marriage is a covenant and this agreement, a partnership between two people till death does us part. And so that's why it's so beautiful. It's because how do you have intimacy? How do you have a real deep closeness with somebody if you're always trying to get out and trying to separate? And so there's a spiritual dynamic that goes on. You want to talk about that as far as just the good times and the bad times? There's always this spiritual dynamic that's happening in our lives.
Yes, because the enemy is out to destroy a marriage relationship. And that is, I think, one thing that we forget about as we are going through life and we experience things like, why am I not connecting with him? Why do we seem to not be on the same page in this area when it seems like we are at other times? And I think the enemy he does not like marriage. He does not like that relationship. He wants to see it fail. He wants you to feel like a failure in your marriage. And so he is out there to get you and to make you feel like you're failing, even though maybe it's just something you need to talk about, or maybe it's something that you need to recognize, no, I'm not going to go down that road. I'm not going to feel like I don't have a purpose in this marriage. I'm not going to feel like I don't have something to give in this relationship.
Yeah, and it's really, it's two becoming one, and we're in this together, but I got to do my part and recognize that if I'm not taking care of myself spiritually and moving towards a growing relationship with Jesus, that shows up when we are together. And it's why am I just agitated or feel unsettled in life? And a lot of times it's just because I'm not doing my part. You know, what's really going on here? And there's been a few times in our life where we've been able to recognize in the moment, and again, just a few times, but like in the moment of like severe conflict or heated battle, and you just recognize, wait, time out, let's just pause, and we out loud say, you know, the enemy, Satan, is trying to get to us. Like, that is part of what's going on. Yes, Scott's a big jerk at times, all right? You know, I do need to apologize for this situation, but we recognize there's a bigger dynamic happening in the moment. There's a spiritual dynamic. And even if you have a spouse that isn't really pursuing God, doesn't have a desire to pursue God, again, you can just do your part in following Jesus. And there's been times in our relationship where one of us is more passionate about following God and what he has and living out those principles in our relationship together. Because the good news, and we'll talk about this, I don't want to steal too much thunder, in a couple of weeks, we'll talk about God has a lot to say. He doesn't have a lot to say about marriage, but he has a ton to say about how we should treat one another. And we're going to talk about that. And that applies in our marriage relationship as well as all of our other relationships, how to serve one another, how to think about their interests. And so we'll talk about that more. So he's got a ton to say. I want to put it out there that God has nothing to say about marriages. But so just there's a spiritual dynamic going on. That's an area of intimacy in your relationship that is happening. Another one is just a legal intimacy. That's just one of the laws of our land. to have a marriage certificate, have a piece of paper. And it's more than a piece of paper. It's more than just having a ceremony or going to the courthouse or the hitching post or wherever it may be. But I think what it really does and helps with the intimacy is it really gives you both a start date that you made this agreement together. Like it gives you a moment. We can look back and go November 8, 2003. That's when we said, I do. That's when we made this commitment that we both have this start date, that there's no vagueness. You know, sometimes as you go down life, or go down the road of intimacy with somebody else, you have a couple of these layers of intimacy, these areas of intimacy going on without a real official start date. And so there's this questioning, there's this wondering, and like, I know we're committed and we share things and we share some of the stuff, but are we really there? And so obviously, technically, we say in our land, in our country, like you're married if you have a piece of paper or you're not. But it's bigger than that. So it includes that, but goes beyond that. So the next one is geographical intimacy. So by that, we mean just physically being together and, living together, obviously, is part of that. But then also doing side-by-side activities. So when Amy and I were dating, she grew up on a farm. Her folks still have a farm. And so when we were dating, I like animals. I love being outside. And so they had a couple of horses. I'm like, great. And there's room to ride around their farm. I'm like, let's go horseback riding. She's like, sure, that's great. Because when you're falling in love, all you need is attraction, right? You're like, yeah. First time I saw Amy, I'm like, I'm in love. I'm attracted. Like, there we go. And so we go on this gorgeous ride. You kind of go up a hill, and you can get to a viewpoint. And you just look out, and there's the countryside. And I'm like, this is great, and horses. And I'm not a good horse rider, but I like to ride horses when I can. And so we're out there and having a good time. It's really not until years later that she confesses she hates riding
like
horses. She doesn't even want to touch animals.
They're
like, it's disgusting.
sweaty and hairy and ugh.
Yeah.
And they're huge.
Right. But she played it off really well that day. Like, really well. Like, I honestly thought we were going to ride horses, like, all the time when we got married. We haven't rode a horse together since.
He was planning to go on a horseback ride to ask me to marry him.
Yes.
And I was like, what? Why don't we just go for a hike or something? We don't have to go and saddle up the horses. That's too much work.
Right. Because I thought you liked horses. Come to find out, maybe our relationship started on a lie,
I like them. It's just
From
not
a
like
distance. Yeah, they're
passion
pretty.
to go out and ride them.
But
Ride them every once in a while.
But here's the thing with intimacy, right? Getting to know somebody with a deep familiarity, like a closeness. And as that stage of our life, we were just getting to know one another. And I thought she loved animals because she grew up on a farm and horseback riding. And because intimacy requires action. It requires constant understanding. So intimacy is a process. It's a journey. It's not a thing you have or don't have. Like, we have a dog. Right? There's a thing we have or don't have. But intimacy is an ongoing process for the rest of your life. It's not like you arrive at a certain place and then you're set and you're good and you move on from then. But this geographical intimacy is not only just a living together, because sometimes you can live with somebody, maybe you had some roommates before, you live with somebody, and you don't even really see each other. You're just kind of always going and coming, and you kind of here and there. But really, in developed intimacy, there's this side-by-side, and we've learned to find some other activities besides horseback riding.
Right. We don't horseback ride, but we've found some other things. We enjoy camping and hiking. We just love being outdoors, really. And except for riding horses, being outdoors and doing things without animals, but with our dog now. And one thing that we have really loved and enjoy doing together is we do triathlons together. And we had a race yesterday, and it was super fun. I got to start before him this time. Usually he gets to start before me. So I got to see him out on the bike course, cheering for each other, and then he passed me on the run, which was fine. And, just seeing him out there and being able to put our competitive side out there a little bit with each other and being able to do that. But we're creating a bond and we're creating memories when we do things like that.
Yeah, guys, here's the great part, is doing side-by-side activities, whether it's gardening or doing house projects or hiking or, some sort of hobby or whatever yours is. You don't have to talk a lot. right? Because you're doing an activity, right? You know, like, hey, isn't this pretty? All right, let's ride the horses back down. You know, it's just, which is great, which is another area, I know we're joking, but it's another area to create memories and bonds and an intimacy, a closeness in that side-by-side activities where you're doing something together. And like for us, doing this today, you know, it's a side-by-side activities. We plan and prepare. It's something that we can do together. Then the next area of intimacy is just emotional intimacy. Emotional intimacy. And really sharing those deep thoughts, those deep feelings. And it doesn't always come easy. You want to talk a little bit about?
Right. So it takes me a while to, I'm not like share my emotions and overflow on him, but so it takes me a while to recognize what my emotions are and explain them to him. And we've had to learn kind of the hard way for him probably that he just needs to let me be and let me think about it, let me process what my emotions are. Don't ask me 4 million questions right now because you're just going to make me upset and I'm not going to be able to answer. And then I will get mad and go upstairs and not want to talk to you. So, not that that's ever happened, but
hypothetically.
But he's learned to take a step back and give me some time to think and process and maybe ask like 1 or 2 questions and then let me think about it for a little bit. Not have an answer, being okay with me not having an answer right away. And then it goes vice versa for me because he likes to talk things through. And so being willing to share and being willing to say, yeah, this is what I'm feeling right now. And sometimes it's not a pretty emotion. Sometimes it's not like, oh, I'm sorry, I felt that. That was really bad. Sometimes it's just me being brutally honest, like you made me feel like dirt. And now let's talk through that and let's not just leave that out there and sweep it under the rug.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's taken us a long time to really figure that out for me, that when she needs time to process, that usually means like hours or days.
It's not a few minutes.
No, I'm like, process, let's think about it. 5 more minutes? What do you need? Like, let's... But by trying to force that intimacy, trying to force the conversation, I've discovered that it doesn't actually create real intimacy because it's not really truly what she's feeling. And to be honest with myself, it's not truly what I've been feeling. Because sometimes you react and you just say, this is what I'm feeling, I'm just going to say it. And if you take time to process for us and for me, it's going, okay, this is what I really feel. Like, get beyond the heat of the moment, get beyond the conflict, and to just be honest. And that happens through face-to-face, and to have an interaction emotionally. There's nothing that beats face-to-face. Text doesn't, the phone doesn't, email doesn't. I mean, you know that. You're aware of that. You're smart people. It's just nothing beats the intimacy that comes through face-to-face. And through our lives, it gets busy and it gets crazy and we get distracted. So taking time, for us to say, kids, we need a few minutes. You got to go find something else to do. You can't interrupt us because we need some face-to-face time. Or we ship the kids off with some grandparents or other people, and we need some face-to-face time to really develop that emotional intimacy and to be honest.
And knowing that emotions aren't a bad thing. They're not bad. It's not bad to tell him that he made me feel bad or that I don't like the way that he treated me there. It's not a bad thing to talk about that. Those are things that you need to talk about and that you need to share. And having emotions is not a bad. You can't just shove them aside because they're going to come out way bigger the next time they show up. So it's better to talk them through, give it a few hours or a few minutes if you're a little faster.
Or days or whatever.
Or days.
Whatever.
But as long as you come back to it, don't just leave it hanging out there because when you if you don't come back to it, it's going to be, it's really bad. It can be really bad.
Right. And so I've just learned for me to say, hey, when you're ready to talk about this, let me know. Like, I still want to talk about whatever's been going on, the emotions here, and I want to hear from you. I really do. And so when you're ready, let me know. And then Amy's been great about growing in that and then coming back and saying, okay, when you said this, it made me feel like this, and then we can have a level of emotional intimacy where I didn't intend it, and you can just have that conversation when you're both at a little bit different state. Here's another part about emotional intimacy in Ecclesiastes 9. It says, live happily with the woman you love And for Amy and I, laughing and being goofy has been one of those great things for us in our relationship. It's just, I know it's part of our personality. I'm a big goober. I'm either like 4 or 40. Those are my two. A friend of mine told me that in college. It's always stuck. Like, I either act like I'm 4 or 40.
You're getting awfully close to 40, though.
Yeah, I know.
So you might need to move that to...
I don't know,
Okay.
60, whatever. But we just goof off, and we have fun, and we laugh, and we just take time to enjoy each other and life and share that, and it just helps. I crack jokes at the most inappropriate and wrong time, and so you learn that, but just enjoying one another. And God says that we should enjoy each other in our relationship. And so maybe you're not a big jokester or laugh a lot, but I would just encourage and challenge you in your relationship to create intimacy emotionally. That's one of those great emotions, just to laugh and have some good time, whatever that is for you. We were just watching, like, Jim Gaffigan's got a special on Netflix, and watched a few minutes of that. And it's just fun. We just laugh along. You have inside jokes that we tell each other and share. And again, that's how from this day forward, maybe that's not been part of your relationship. Like, start adding that in. Start putting pieces where you're laughing along and enjoying. Next one is intellectual intimacy. Intellectual intimacy. And by that, just sharing those big thoughts, those ideas, those dreams. And here's the fun and kind of crazy part about it, is it's real risky. It's real risky. And you would think it wouldn't be so risky with the person, like your spouse, to share. But not just sharing, like, just thoughts about politics or the weather or some, social event. But, like, sharing some of those things that are, for you, deep down, part of who you are, some of your dreams, some of the things that you haven't really shared with anybody else. You're not even sure if you believe it, but you just kind of like, I feel like this is inside of me, and I want to share that. To trust somebody else with that is a risky thing. And you wanted to share a little bit about that as far as some of your journey recently.
Yes. So we have 3 kids, and as they've gotten older, and I love being a mom. It's a passion of mine. I enjoy it immensely. And as they've gotten older and don't need as much of my attention, and they can kind of do things on their own, it kind of frees you up as a mom to...
They can put their own clothes on.
Right. Take a shower.
Shower,
yes,
feed themselves.
Bathroom, all those things.
Yeah.
Those are good.
Living the high life now,
yeah.
people. Living the high life.
Yeah. So I kind of struggled for a few years of what am I supposed to do after my kids are older and they're going to school, so I have a little more free time during the day. Like, what does that look like for me as a person? I want to be a mom, and I want to be able to do things with my kids still, but I don't necessarily want to be strapped down in a conventional job and have someone else tell me my schedule. And so we always have had a lot of dreams and a lot of ideas that we've bounced off each other with, like, oh, I wish I could do that, or, not that they ever really come to be something, but just to be able to share those. And so I share a lot of ideas and dreams with Scott, and last fall I started to see one of my dreams become a passion, and started a little side business that I can do in our garage and do on my own and in my own free time, and I love it. It's something that I love doing, and it's never a drag for me. I'm always excited to go out in the garage and start a new little project, and it's just something that he's encouraged me to do, and then it's something that he enjoys doing, so then it becomes something that we can do together, so it becomes one of those geographical things that we can talk about and do together also.
Yeah, and it's been fun to see Amy not really wrestle with that question as much as far as, like, what is my purpose? And it takes some vulnerability, and for her to share that and to be risky and going after. And so, just encourage you with the intellectual intimacy, sharing some of those things. You kind of sometimes start with, I never really shared this with anybody. I've always had this thought or this dream or this idea, or to really express your your thought on a topic or a subject with your spouse. It just creates that intimacy. And so from this day forward, maybe that would be an area where you would start to grow towards. And like Amy said too, we have our kids, and so for the last few years, we're really trying to figure out how to be parents. And we've got kids that are 6, 8, and 10 now. And so we have a lot of conversation, a lot of ideas that we've shared with one another on how to parent and how do we understand our child at this stage, and how do we help them grow at this stage, and get into our kids' heart. And so that's obviously a lot that we talk about. But we also look to the future and think, okay, one day we're not going to have the kids. And we just got a dog a couple weeks ago. And so I said this actually just a couple weeks ago. I said, one day, because the kids were all gone, one day it's just going to be you and me and this dog. Like, that's going to be it. And so we're trying to be mindful as we keep moving forward that we don't want to have that like empty nest syndrome and the kids leave and the people look at each other. We've heard stories and go, okay, now what do we talk about? Because
Who are you?
yeah, who are you? Like, we never shared ideas. We just always talked around the kids and what the kids were doing, and we didn't really have an intimacy that was there, and it becomes evident when the kids are gone or something else is removed in your life, and you're going, we've spent 18, 20, 25 years raising kids, and we haven't really talked. And so we just look forward and go, we don't want to be there. We want to continue to love our kids and have intimacy with them, but then also with each other. And so sharing some of those things is kind of, again, we're separating out intimacy, but they all overlap, right? When you share some big dreams or thoughts, there's a lot of emotions there. There's a lot of feeling there. Like you said, doing side-by-side activity. Another area of intimacy is financial intimacy. And this can be a really, really difficult one, depending on your background and how you were raised and what stage of life maybe you're entering marriage, and maybe you've been single as an adult for a long time, so you're used to having your own money. And when we got married, I'd been out of the house for a number of years and lived on my own and had my own money. And so we got married, and Amy was working. And so when we got started, she had some money, I had some money, and then we had some money. That's kind of how it started. Right? She worked, and then she could do some things, and then I worked, and then I could do some things and have some money, and then we'd have to come together and pay some of the stuff for the house. But there was really like 3 different areas. But to have close familiarity with one another, to have oneness when 2 become one, we just looked to God, and so God said, you should put all of your money together and have one pot of money, one checking account, one area where the 2 of us get together and we make decisions together. Like, that's one of the areas for us that we started to do, and we've had to figure it out. But like making decisions together, agreeing together, it's our money, regardless of quote unquote who makes it, who gets the check or the income, but it's our money together. And but it wasn't always that way.
No.
And so
when we first got married, it was really, I don't know why, it was really hard for me to go to work, and then I felt like I needed.
it was your money.
Yeah, it was my money, so I should be able to do whatever I want with it, even though we had other things we needed to do with it too. But I was working, and I was making good money. So, but not having a plan for our money was not helpful. And I distinctly remember, like I can put myself back in this. I was standing in line at Old Navy in Silverdale, Washington, because we lived over on that side of the water, and I was going to make a purchase. It was all on sale. It was about $20, $25 worth of clothing. And I remember standing in line, like getting the pit sweats, starting to shake inside, like, okay, I probably don't truly need this, but I really want to buy it. And I hope we can pay the water bill if I do, because, I won't worry about it. If I need to take it back, I'll just bring it back. It won't be a big deal. So I purchased it anyway, but it just was horrible, because I would go to the store and think, oh my gosh, I hope, I'll try and stay in budget, even though we didn't really have a budget, so what does that really mean? And so then you're just swiping your card, and it's like, no big deal, we'll figure it out. And he was really good at spreadsheets, and he had color coding and all of this horribly confusing things, and I would hate sitting down and talking about money because it would be so stressful. And
Me too. Yeah,
yes,
it was bad. It was just all around bad.
It was really bad, and we would avoid it like the plague as long as we could. And then we're like, okay, tonight we have to sit down and talk about money. And then I would like start pit sweating and be like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be the worst night ever. But since moving back here, we decided, okay, especially with having kids and wanting to purchase a house and being more, and for me to stay home with the kids, we decided, look, we need to have a purpose and a plan for our money. We cannot I can't take any more of these color-coded spreadsheets, and we need to have a
And I
better
can't
plan.
take any more just random Target shopping.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Target and Old Navy.
Just blow a bunch of money.
Because it would
and-
always be like, oh, what'd you buy there? I don't know. Probably stuff for the house.
Right. Right. But it was just evident of there wasn't a lot of close familiarity. She would spend and have some money, and I would spend and have some money, and then we kind of would get together, but then really deciding that we're really going to have oneness. Like it's all the money comes on the table every single time there's income, and we make decisions together. And that's, again, been 14 years of learning that process. And when it gets off, like a couple of months ago, it was kind of crazy for us, and that we didn't feel oneness, and we feel out of place and
Super.
awkward, and it just is weird. And the other thing for us in the financial intimacy is just having bigger goals in life. Like, again, sharing some of those. We share dreams and big ideas and thoughts. A lot of times it takes money behind it, and to have a vision for your life. And so for us to like sacrifice and work hard and be together and go through the pit sweats and go through the harder conversations and, make it, because we're looking forward. We're going from this day forward. We don't want to be where we're at. We want to be somewhere else in the future. And so what do we need to do today to make that happen? What seeds do we need to sow today to see fruit of later in the next month or year or 10 years from now? And also this idea for us of intimacy, we just come back to what Jesus has to say and how to live life, and recognizing that it's a spiritual dynamic going on with all these areas, whether it's the intellectual, emotional, especially with the financial, it can really get to our heart, and just having contentment. And Paul said, and God spoke through Paul to say, you know what, here's how to live life. Godliness with contentment with where you're at financially, whether you have a ton or where you feel like you have none. And Paul knew both. He said, godliness with that contentment, that's great wealth. And for us financially to have intimacy and to have a growing intimacy and a trajectory that gets us closer together, saying, God, regardless of how much stuff we have or don't have, that we just want to have godliness and we want to be okay with that, and that we know that's great wealth. And we don't do it perfectly, but that's our target, that's our aim. The last area that we want to talk about this morning is physical intimacy. I thought maybe one guy would be like, yeah, all right, let's talk about it. Let's do this. Yes, intimacy. Right, glad we're talking about it today then. Here we go. Physical intimacy. And it's more than having sex. Like, you remember when we were dating, you shared a story. Did you want to share that?
Oh, sure. I remember when we were dating, and I don't remember where we were driving, and we were talking about something, and I just kind of put my arm around him in the seat and was rubbing his back, and he looked at me and said, that makes me feel loved. And I thought, what? I'm just like rubbing your back. It's not a big deal. But I remember that, and I remember that he said that because one of his main love language is physical touch. And for me, that doesn't come to mind the first thing like, oh, I should rub his back, or I should hold his hand when we're out in public, or I should, give him a hug in the morning because that's important to him. But that reminds me that he is a physical touch guy, and that I need to think about that. Like, just putting my arm around him in the car, rubbing his back, makes him feel loved, even though it's not really like, woo, for me.
And there you go. Sums it all up. Woo. Woo. Yeah. But again, that's just one of those areas, emotionally sharing and saying, hey, I appreciate that when you do that, and it's stuck. And so, and for me to understand that sex starts way before the bedroom. And it involves all of these other areas of intimacy, the emotional intimacy and the sharing of ideas, that it starts way before. And so learning that and growing in that and understanding that if we're fighting and if they're arguing, there's conflict and we have a money thing and there's stress and there's tension and feel like there's distance because we're not sharing, our thoughts and ideas of what's going on in life, like it's really, really far-fetched to think that we would just be having sex tonight. It just is, it starts way before. And so I've learned that I need to continue to flirt with my wife. Like, almost pretend like we're not together, and I'm still trying to get her attention and still trying to do those things that when we first got started, besides going on the horseback riding thing, but like bringing the flowers and opening her car door still, and doing those things and like trying to get her attention like I did before. That once once we got married, like that should increase, not just instantly stop because now we're together and we just go on cruise control. Because again, intimacy is that process. And so it starts way before. So, and guys, just so flirt, like if you're with your spouse, like, go after her and woo her and do things that you did before to attract her to you. And if you've been doing it for a while, you might need to mix up your approach, okay? Your go-to thing may not be good anymore. Like you may need to mix it into like one or two other things. Like you think, oh yeah, this always works. Like whatever your thing, like if you're bringing the flowers, she may love that. But if you mix it in there with something else, or, if you get out of the shower and like, hey baby, you want to, like you may want to add in something else to the repertoire, all right? Change your approach and mix it up. Do something different. But pursue your wife. And it involves all these other areas. And just know, as you're emotionally connecting, she's going to be emotionally connected, that she needs that emotional connection before there's a physical connection. And a lot of times for guys, it's a physical connection that creates the emotional connection. And understand how that can create some serious conflict. And so if you understand there's all these other areas with spiritually and emotionally and intellectually and doing side-by-side activities and having some face-to-face time really leads into physical intimacy. So our first year of marriage, we set a bunch of goals our first year of marriage. We ran some races. We did some financial goals. We were just trying to, it was me, my spreadsheets and things, but we were just trying to get stuff started. And so we set a physical goal. This is me letting you talk and share that. You didn't want to share that. All right.
I thought you were going to tell that.
Oh, okay.
We made a physical goal that we would have sex in a different spot every month, just to shake it up, just to do something different. And
yep, and that's all we can share on that one.
We won't go into
because that's for us to
particulars
know
of
our
that.
close familiarity,
Right.
what and
Right.
where and all that kind of stuff. But it's still great. I mean, we drive around the region and we still be like, hey, remember? And so. Just that's all I can say on that. I got parents in the back. I got kids over here. All right. But creating that familiarity, closeness, proximity, creating that intimacy. So from this day forward, it doesn't matter if you're in your 50s or 60s and whatever. Right. So as we wrap up here today.
Oh, I was just going to say
one
more thing.
You want to say one thing?
I
Go
did
ahead.
have one thing to say. It wasn't the other thing. But with the physical, ladies, sometimes just initiate it. Because it's not the first thing that you would think about, and it would totally throw them off if you would initiate it sometimes.
Just any kind of approach would be good. Yep.
Anything.
Just anything. Like you're cooking in the kitchen and be like, hey, you know what I was thinking? Yes, absolutely. Anything works. We're pretty responsive. Like, yep, go for it. Yes. So we got all these different areas of intimacy, right? All these different areas, and you could probably add some more to it and talk about it, but you have all these things. Like, what does it really mean to be married? It includes all of these things and more. And intimacy is a growing thing. It's a process. And so don't get hung up. Hopefully you're encouraged today and challenged today. Don't get hung up on the past. Look at the past to learn, but live your life looking forward. So from this day forward, these different areas of intimacy. And we just got two questions here for us, all of us here this morning, married couples, all of us. Which area of intimacy do we need to grow in? Do you have lunch today? Do you have a moment that you can sit down today and you just have this conversation? It might be real risky for you. It might be real new for you to open up the lines of communication to talk about some of these things. Maybe you talk about a couple different things. You do that really well, but you don't talk about some of the areas. That you would sit down today, that you would just say with some face-to-face time, say, what area do you think we need to grow in? Because me as a husband, I might think we're good in a few of these areas, and it might be surprising to hear from Amy say, I think we need to grow in the emotional area. It might be surprising because I might think we're doing fine in that. And so for you and your relationship, I would encourage you not to assume and to ask that question and be part of your regular time together as you have face-to-face time. Like, what area do you think we need to grow in? And then just let them be. Like, let like, don't keep talking, Scott. Just like be quiet and let her process and think about it and to vocalize, you know. And then ask this next question. You talk about what are we going to do to grow in that area of intimacy? To actually do something with it. And you know, we've had these conversations. You kind of can get overwhelming. What would be your advice on that?
I think you just take one area. And we were talking about it last night, and I said, well, there's 6 months left in the year. You could just take one area for each month. Start with the one that you need to work on the most, and then end with the one that maybe you both say, hey, yeah, we're super good in that one. And but I think just take one area and work on it, and you won't see results. It's not like anything else, a diet or a workout program. It's not going to be results overnight. Sorry. But with each step, it'll grow and it'll get easier, and be bold and be brave in your conversation as you talk about the things that you feel like you need to grow in, because they will be different areas.
Yeah. And so again, just begin to sow from this day forward. Begin to sow into your relationship in that area or in those areas, the good stuff. Sow in those good stuff, and you'll see the fruit next month, and then 10 months from now, and a year from now, and 10 years from now. And again, this is a lifelong process. It's not to reach a destination and have intimacy, and then you're good to go, and you just can be on cruise control. But you're continually growing in that. And just encourage you with that this morning. Those are just some of the things that we've learned. But we want your marriage to be successful. We want you to have a thriving marriage that's wonderful and beautiful, because it's a beautiful thing that God has designed for two people to come together and have this oneness, to have this closeness, this intimacy, to share deep thoughts and feelings, to have an immense amount of trust. And I know it can be real tricky in those situations where you feel like, I just don't want to trust that person anymore. Trust them with my finances, trust them with my emotions, trust them with my ideas, trust them with my physical body, that there's a separation. We felt our strained at times, and you just like, I don't even want to be near you. And it's counterintuitive to think what I need to do to build that trust back is to throw myself out there, because you want to hold yourself back. And I know it can be tricky and risky, but it's worth it. It's beautiful. And you've done it before in your past, where you've put yourself out there, you've shared something in one of these areas, and you've seen some vulnerability. And if the both of you are doing that together, and you're both wanting to grow together, it's a wonderful thing to rebuild that trust. And it goes hand in hand. As soon as you start to share, and the other person is gentle with you and in whatever it is that you're sharing, then it encourages you to share some more, encourages you to build that trust. And so just want to help you with that conversation today. Just ask that question and say, okay, how can we grow in that area? What can we do? And just that your marriage will be strengthened, because, again, for us, we're not perfect, but we just know with following Jesus, putting him first, trying to live our lives to honor him and to glorify him, and then do the things he's asked us to do, to love one another and serve one another, and to cherish my wife, and to elevate her and encourage her and bring out the gifts and talents that God has given her. And if we both do that, that it grows into a beautiful thing. So can we pray for you this morning as we wrap up? Jesus, we're thankful.